Welcome to Regulatory Ramblings. Our podcast today is brought to you by the University of Hong Kong's RegTech Lab, the HKU SCF FinTech Academy, the Asia Global Institute, and the HKU edX Professional Certificate in FinTech, with support from the university's Faculty of Law. I'm your host, Ajay Shamdasani. Today's broadcast is Mideast-centric, specifically the United Arab Emirates, and in particular its most renowned emirate or city, Dubai. In our Spotlight section, we'll be joined by two returning guests, Syed Musheer Ahmed, FinStep Asia, and Mark Nuttall, founder of the Dubai-based Fostis consultancy, to discuss the proposition, what has made Dubai such a success in the virtual asset space over other jurisdictions. Since the start of the decade, Dubai has made a name for itself in the crypto arena. After that, we'll speak to authors Jame DiBiasio and Charles Dossi about their new book entitled Arabian Crypto, about digital asset pioneers in the UAE, also centered on Dubai. But first, a recent LinkedIn post from Anton Galoob, the chief business officer of the FreeDex crypto exchange in Dubai, helps put things in perspective. Dubai became the world's largest regulated crypto market, he said. Not New York, not London, not Singapore. Now, personally, Dubai, it's not bad for a place that well into the early 90s only had one major Western-style shopping mall to speak of, the famed Al Ghurair Center. But as Mr. Galoob tells us, consider this, the emirate has, for the year-to-date 2025, logged over 2.5 trillion dirhams in regulated virtual asset transactions. That's 681 billion US dollars. Dubai also boasts over 40 licensed entities under the oversight of the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, or VARA, the first such regulator of its kind in the world, which was launched in 2022. Dubai has also fined 19 firms under clear enforcement measures. And more broadly, Abu Dhabi, the UAE's capital, has made a $2 billion institutional investment into Binance. As Anton goes on to say, quote, all of this in just 3 years. The thing that Dubai understood is what others didn't. Planning matters, but execution is key. While other jurisdictions quibbled about definitions, the UAE built its fintech infrastructure for the growth and development yet to come. To quote Anton, while Europe buried itself in mica, Dubai executed. While the US chased headlines, VARA licensed markets. And of VARA's creation, he said, it was built like sovereign infrastructure. Every major exchange, Binance, OKK, Bybit, moved fast to comply. And as he put it, this wasn't about crypto friendly. It was about crypto integrated. And I think that's enough of a preface. I think that sets the stage. Now let's turn to our guests. Musheer Ahmed has over 18 years of extensive experience as an ecosystem builder in the realms of capital markets, fintech, and virtual assets. That includes a decade as global markets trader prior to coming to Hong Kong to attain his MBA from the University of Hong Kong and London Business School's joint program. Since 2016, he's contributed extensively to building the region's fintech and virtual assets environment, particularly as the co-founder and concurrent board member and inaugural general manager of the Fintech Association of Hong Kong. For the past 5 years, he's been the managing director of FinStep Asia, a firm which he founded. And in the interim, he was a financial regulator in Dubai from October 2022 to January 2024. He served as a financial markets risk assurance lead with VARA in Dubai. Mark Nuttall is an executive and geopolitical advisor and strategic deal facilitator. With over 25 years of experience in strategic leadership, risk management, and business development, he's held roles at the Metropolitan Police in London, Thomson Reuters, Interpol, and Hill & Associates. He founded the Fostis consultancy and the Iron Club, and offers his executive advisory services working across the Asia Pacific, MENA, and Europe to drive growth, optimize operations, facilitate deals, and enhance governance. Particularly when it comes to risk management and governance, he's implemented plans focused on risk mitigation, resilience, improving governance standards, and has also managed complex investigations and multi-agency operations. In terms of his subject matter expertise, He's delivered advisory services on governance, compliance, risk reduction, finance, leadership, geopolitics, anti-money laundering, resilience, security, and ESG in contemporary times. He's also provided keynote speakers and mentorship to C-suite and geopolitical audiences. And with that, I turn over to our guests. Musheer and Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Ajay. Pleasure to be back.
It's always a pleasure, AJ, and I think you've already done our job for us. I think we can go home now. You've done everything.
Well, I mean, let me turn to you first, Musheer. I mean, given that
Sure.
you worked for Vara, I mean, so you've got a unique perspective. I mean, I
Mhm.
hope at some point you will write your memoirs about, my 18 months as a regulator. But why was Dubai successful? I mean, even when this program started in 2022, even then it was, it was clear Dubai was ahead of the pack. But just 2 years earlier in 2020, people were talking about a race between Hong Kong and Singapore appeared to be in the lead. And then, but yet by 2022, you come around to then, and it turns out, okay, well, Singapore is stalled. No one's getting approved. Everything's on provisional. And there has been progress since then. Even Hong Kong's regulatory apparatus has evolved. But I mean, that's more reactionary. That came after the fact, after Dubai had already staked its pole as the first. Why was Dubai so successful?
Thanks, Ajay, for that question. A clear disclaimer, the views are completely of my own. Nothing in this is endorsed or validated or a reference to the Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority of Dubai or any other regulator that I've worked with. Now,
Understood.
for me, Dubai kind of encapsulates the term impossible is nothing. It's a cultural thing, right? It's a mindset that boils down in Dubai, but broadly also in the UAE, but specifically in Dubai with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed's views and how he has implemented and driven change in the Emirate, right? From the setup of the Burj Al Arab all the way to the Virtual Assets Authority to the future of AI and other elements. Now, why I'm mentioning this is I think it's a very important element to understand that when the leadership has such a strong culture of being able to evaluate risk, but also be very progressive in saying, okay, let's try this out. This can have XYZ benefit, and let's drive this, right? Tell me an implementation plan of how this would work. What would be the benefit? And I'm happy to support it and drive it for that matter for many of the initiatives. And that's what happened with Dubai as well, right? So when 2022 was just towards the end of when COVID was being wrapped up in terms of lockdowns, etc., Dubai had already been open and welcoming visitors. And they have a knack of once the evaluation is done for projects, as I mentioned, implementation is fast. So VARA was established in early 2022, March to April, and then the team was operational very next quarter with the regulations coming out in February, March of 2023. And so that I think was very important. They brought in and they're very sensitive to the fact that it wasn't about just building a regulator with a lot of people with a traditional finance background. It was very important to bring in people who understood virtual assets as well. So most of the founding team came from a mix of having traditional finance and crypto background, like I did, or coming in from a crypto ecosystem as well. So that helped significantly in accelerating the process, including the regulations, which was driven in support of with T.A. Piper and others, to launch, consult with the industry, be able to take their points on board quickly, reiterate, and go ahead with it while keeping in mind that that's a living document. That helped, while, as you mentioned, Singapore and Hong Kong had frameworks, but they were not as comprehensive at that time, and they were still being sorted out. Singapore probably, you could say, still had something, whereas MICA was not yet in place. So the execution was very important. And for most of the major global crypto firms, they needed a place where they can find legitimacy in terms of getting the right licenses and also be able to operate, at least from an Asia-wide perspective, if not global perspective, from one city. And that's where the VARA licenses helped. They were very robust. In some instances, I would say the requirements are more robust or stronger than even in Europe. We used to get that feedback as well. So it's not like, oh, hey, it's easy, just come and get a license. It actually is a very, very comprehensive work that goes on. Fact that only 40 odd licenses have been issued in 2+ years tells you that it is a lot of work that goes behind vetting the applications. And that shows in the quality, because once they launch, it allowed for the market volumes to grow and major exchanges to operate from here, which adds to that number of, in terms of the size and scale of the virtual assets trading volumes from Dubai. It's not only local, it's probably also includes regional and global numbers.
Mark?
I think we've got to realise as well that we're in the United Arab Emirates as a country. On top of this, VAR are extremely excellent at doing what they do for Dubai. And, even as recently as over the past couple of days, they've put notices out against various organisations that have been claiming to be regulated, but actually aren't regulated. And I'll let people go onto their website to view those. But the entire infrastructure, because they're all also, obviously, we're talking about tokenization here as well. So not just the crypto space, because people seem to look at crypto as just that coin that can add a certain fiscal value to it, rather than this tokenization, assets, companies, all of that business. And obviously we've got companies here at the moment that have tokenized property as well, etc. So it's worthy of evaluating that. But obviously there's not just VAR. VAR is Dubai outside the DIFC. Then you've got the DFSA, which do the look after the DIFC itself. Then you've got ADGM with the FSRA, and you've got also the SCA as well, the onshore UAE outside those particular financial free zones and outside of Dubai. So what they've looked at doing here is, because obviously you've got various different levels of legalities here, jurisdictions, you've got 7 emirates. You've also got now, obviously, Ras Al Khaimah coming online with the Wynn integrated resort. I won't use the other word for it over there. And over there, they've also got digital assets oasis as well. So the country's very bullish on this area. And it's very bullish on this area because, as Musheer quite rightly pointed out, this entire country is based on trade. It's trade first and foremost. And to have trade, you also need trust. And in that, they've looked at it and gone, well, we're not just going to kind of cease the potential of trade in this area and the trade that can be kind of expedited by these value stores as well. What we're going to do is we're going to sensibly look at them. We're going to sensibly work out how regulation forms a key component of it, because you need that trust element of it, and how governance is going to become one of the key driving factors to make it a real store of value, or to make these assets a store of value, because we've got to view them that way, rather than kind of this, I don't know, a semi-contemporary traditional look at something that most people have looked down on for many years. Now, I've got my own personal views on crypto itself and the many different tokens that you can see these days. But in terms of some of the applications that can be meted out in terms of trust, stores in being able to identify how you can tokenize something, then yes, but it does need to be regulated and it needs to be formed with such thought that, especially for the retail market can be highly precocious. So,
Mark, I was just going to say, to your point about trade, I mean, clearly that forces you to be smarter, because, I mean, unlike Abu Dhabi, Dubai does not have the advantage of, okay, they know give the amount of oil they've got under their soil, They can count on X amount of revenue, the price of oil being within a certain range. They can count on X amount of revenue for the next couple of quarters. Musheer, I also wanted to bring up something, respond to something you said. That I mean, that's always been the ongoing debate, hasn't it? Do you go with a plain vanilla general purpose regulator like the ADGM, a regulator that regulates securities and the capital markets, who also then happens to regulate virtual assets, or do you create a specialist regulator? And to your, there were concerns, and we've discussed this before, that there were concerns that virtual asset regulator focused on crypto might get too close to the industry, might bend over backwards to please them. And clearly that's not been the case. They've got their standards and they've got a reputation to maintain, because the old Dubai of the biggest of this, the widest of that, the deepest of that, Dubai was for the longest time known for novelties and shopping festivals and gimmicks and amusement and entertainment. But now they're being taken seriously
Yep.
when it comes to important stuff. And I don't think people fully appreciate how much Dubai has risen in the world. Not just, but I mean, and crypto is just one manifestation, one microcosm of that. Of course, they don't have as evolved of a private equity scene, but that's a discussion for another time. Musheer.
Thanks. I'm going to start with something Mark mentioned, which I think is very important, is protection for retail users, right? So one of the drivers when you look at the regulations and setup of VARA was you have high engagement, involvement, usage of crypto by retail market in the Middle East. Dubai, UAE in general has seen numbers being high. So as a government and as a you do want to ensure that they are well protected, and a regulator just makes sense, right? So that was the vision. You can also say that now when we look at 2025 as this major turning point in the US policy with regards to virtual assets, going from very securities lens to now being like very, very much pro crypto across CFTC, SEC, and even the Fed. You can say that Dubai was ahead of the game in terms of that embracing of this as one of the major aspects or assets being driven in the world. It is an alternative asset. It is not a mainstream asset, and even more so the need for regulation. So that's one point. The second piece about Dubai and the GDP, etc. One thing I want to highlight: quite often, for people, Dubai is a country, right? I mean, you've lived there, you and Mark is there as well now, so we all get that distinction. But for many people, it's a bit like when we used to ask people what's the capital of the United States, people say New York without knowing Washington. But the Dubai is part of the UAE. Yes, it's an emirate. It has its own budget. It has its own focuses, but it's part
But
of
for
the
the
emirate.
longest time, people thought Dubai was the capital of the UAE, much to the chagrin of Abu Dhabi.
Correct. Yeah. So, but the fact of the matter, as much as we can say, yes, 80% of the country is Abu Dhabi in terms of the geographical area, GDP, etc. Because a lot of the oil base lies in Abu Dhabi. It's still one country, right? So as long as
you realize at one time it was actually part of Abu Dhabi. They had to fight for their independence.
I mean, yeah. So that's all. But since 1960, whatever, right? Since we've had the United Arab Emirates, what I'm trying to say is that it's part of a country. And so if the GDP is being contributed from oil in Abu Dhabi, doesn't mean that doesn't come into Dubai as an emirate, but they have their own budget, which they're driving very much in the federal system that exists in other countries. My point here being that Dubai has always been like, what can we do to bring in economic growth in various sectors? And they have like being in the cutting edge of tourism, so luxury when you take the Burj Al Arab and the Palm, then followed up with looking at how they can build Dubai in the middle of the desert through the Burj Khalifa and other elements to be a major destination for passing through tourists, and now directly tourists coming just to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And then follows up with what they did with AI, what they've done with virtual assets. So it's just in their DNA. You could also say that they have taken a bit of a leaf from Singapore as a city-state in terms of not having necessarily natural resources. So looking at how they can engage and attract global talent, but also global industries for the leading innovator in financial services. that also leads to the question around private equity and capital markets, which will take a few years to build out because most of the people coming in are in the broader um, ecosystem layer and building companies layer, while there are a significant amount of funds and size and scale of funds that exist in both Abu Dhabi and also in Dubai. You will see that it will take time for capital markets to progress. Singapore is a classic example of having had significant growth in fintech and other technology, especially in the startup world, but not seen any major IPOs besides a couple of them from the e-commerce players that we've seen, but not really having the same depth of capital markets like a Hong Kong or a London or a New York, right? So I do believe there will be growth in that space, but it'll take 5 to 10 years for the capital markets to grow in depth. But that doesn't stop the regulators and the government from pushing through. A last piece on this is you also have to look at the federal regulators, in particular CBUAE, who are been driving a lot of innovation and change, and ESCA now, who also have a federal level regulations in place for virtual assets. So what it provides is VARA regulates companies who are looking to set up in Dubai and operating virtual assets. They get a registration with ESCA, which allows them to also operate on a federal level. While for the Russell Khaimas of the world and other Emirates, if they don't have a federal authority, if they don't have a regulatory authority locally for the emirate, that will then fall under ESTA, and they can then operate across the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, I want to quickly read the last part of Mr. Golub's post on LinkedIn, and I think he distills it down pretty well. And many of his points dovetail with yours, Musheer. A quote: "Why did it work? One, vision before regulation. The UAE understands digital assets are not about price; they're about power. Two, infrastructure before hype. Tiered licenses, real enforcement, credible frameworks. Three, integration before scale. Digital assets were woven into AI, banking, cloud, and sovereign funds. The result, Dubai now governs a trust infrastructure for a multi-trillion-dollar global asset class. The UAE is not waiting for the future," he says, "it's building it." And then he goes on to point out, the things that to watch for in their agenda: the tokenization of real assets, CBDC-backed stablecoin flows, such as the Digital Dirham, the AI native finance via MGX, G42, Presight, on-chain financial infrastructure as a national policy. Quote: "If you're sitting in a crypto hub that can't even issue licenses, if your lawyers are still debating whether stablecoins are money, securities, or heresy, if your project is raising money in one country, banking in another, and listing in a third, come to Dubai. This is where execution beats excuses." End quote. It sums. I mean, he's being Pollyannish a little bit, but I mean, it's not as though he's deviating from the truth either. I mean, it is reflected by the reality on the ground. In the time we've got left, any closing remarks that you both like to leave our listeners with?
So I think we need to look deeper as well in terms of what tokenization looks like, what it is, how it's a store of wealth, and people need to realize that, like anything, it's transient and of a contemporary age. Things will move on, and Dubai will move on with it, and so will the United Arab Emirates. I think the creation of Stargate over in Abu Dhabi, one of the world's largest data center as it's going to be, and not just data center, but artificial intelligence data center, that will change things tooth and nail. So I would say that don't just look at what is of today, look into the future, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, great. And Musheer,
UAE, and in particular Dubai, is transforming. It is very welcoming. As an example, I got my 10-year golden visa within an 8-hour process because they have pre-approved, but to be able to run through the process. Thank you. But the fact that they could be so efficient and run through all of that, even for pre-qualified individuals, is very remarkable. So execution is very, very high. And what we are seeing, as you mentioned, is there's now strong substance. The population of Dubai has almost doubled over the last 10 years, and more people coming in. So you have high talent. It is evolving, but keep an eye out for how Dubai becomes one of the major financial centers globally, not just in the Middle East. So my expectation is the next 5 to 7 years, Dubai and Abu Dhabi as a joint twin cities as they were, or hubs will be very, very influential in the Asian world from both financial services as well as technology, running parallel with what we have seen from a Hong Kong and the Shenzhen play. It will take time to reach the scale of both the cities, given individually the cities have the GDP of the UAE, but you definitely will see them scale to a very strong positioning in the region.
Can I just add something
Sure.
onto that as well, please, AJ?
Sure.
Which is, do not mark Ras Al Khaimah out of this because of the sheer nature of the Win integrated resort that's going in over there, plus the digital assets oasis that they're creating. So people need to keep an eye on Ras Al Khaimah and watch what's going on over there.
That's now becomes the Macau of the GBA, right, Mark?
Correct.
Well, I mean, people think of only Dubai and Abu Dhabi because really, one's the backbone, oil hub. One's the national capital. The other is the financial hub. And in terms of national legislation at the federal level, only Dubai and Abu Dhabi have veto power. So that's. I mean, it's unfair, but that's how it is. But Musheer, I just want to point out, you aware that the wealthy, the ruling elite in India, particularly in Mumbai, regard Dubai as a suburb of Bombay now because it's just a couple of hours away by flight.
Yeah, probably. Look, I often, Dubai has been very welcoming for the South Asian diaspora, and many of us feel at home when we are in Dubai and also broadly in the UAE, right? I mean, I love the food. It serves my palate very well. But the fact of the matter is, as I said, it's becoming a financial hub not just because of the regulations. It's also about where funds are moving, where people are seeing as a major hub. One of the drivers for Hong Kong and Singapore is the HNIs, right? The family offices who are coming in. So it's not just the sovereign wealth that is supporting a lot of the funds and VCs, etc., to set up base and push on in the UAE, but it's also a lot of the family offices and HNI or ultra HNIs coming in from South Asia, from Africa, who all feel very familiar with Dubai and are using the double taxation agreements and other benefits to set up their investment funds or move their family legacy wealth into Dubai. So it will, and Abu Dhabi is where we see most of the funds being set up. So I do think that's a major factor. So it's going to be across the board. It is very vibrant. I do want to add a word of caution that earlier, say 2-3 years ago, there probably was some gap for very high quality professionals to come in and get a premium for their expertise. Now that gap is significantly reduced. You get on market probably similar to what you were getting in your home market because quite a few people want to come to Dubai. So it's no longer Dubai needing to go drive aggressively or promote itself heavily to bring people to the city. The world has done that for them. And you see the influencers and all the others who speak about how Dubai is, but people have worked in Dubai, people have experienced the lifestyle, and of course, the zero tax personal tax regime is a big benefactor. That is attracting a lot of people to come to Dubai as it is, and that adds to the development. Because when you see good talent coming with global expertise, it helps you build your companies and scale them faster. And that I think is visas, as I mentioned, with my golden visa being at the other end. But most visas in Dubai are very easy to get if you have the right qualification and you clear the security clearances. So yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, people in capital go where they're treated best, and water always finds the path of least resistance. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Shukra.
I have to do it again sometime, and we'll be right back. And we're back. We're chatting with authors Jame DiBiasio and Charles Dossi about their new book entitled Arabian Crypto. It's about digital asset pioneers in the UAE. But first, a little bit about our authors. Jame DiBiasio has had quite a journey going from well-seasoned reporter to writer, editor, author, content creator, especially in the realm of fintech, leading ultimately to becoming a media entrepreneur, board director, and podcaster. He still regards himself as all the above, and as he puts it, leveraging experiences to provide bespoke story-based projects and to advise companies, end quote. Based in Hong Kong, he's currently the founder and managing partner of JDB Advisors and provides companies in fintech, financial services, wealth management, and digital assets with insight, advice, and services to support their growth narrative. The firm's edge is its ability to include media expertise, co-authorship, podcasting, writing, and research, as well as recruitment. Ultimately, he helps fintech and finance businesses with media, narrative, content, and governance. His firm, JDBA, also publishes its own in-house media, the JDB Report, covering tech and money. Without a doubt, James' passion is writing, and he is the author of about a dozen books, of which 5 are nonfiction. Other than Arabian crypto, his other titles include Planet VC, about the story of venture capital beyond Silicon Valley, Block Kong, in which he profiled blockchain leaders and entrepreneurs shaping the territory's, Hong Kong's virtual asset ecosystem, and Cowries to Crypto, the history of money. His non-business history books are The Story of Angkor and Who Killed the King of Bagan, each covering one of Southeast Asia's great temple civilizations. James also writes fiction under a pen name, which he encourages the rest of us to figure out. Charles Dawsey is based in Dubai and is the CEO of the DYDX Foundation, a community built around decentralized derivatives trading with, at its core, a decentralized finance, or DeFi, protocol for perpetual futures. Before joining DYDX, Charles served as the global head of business development at Consensus. His diverse career includes entrepreneurial ventures, executive roles at fintech startups, and a stint as the head of fintech with Invest Hong Kong, a quasi-governmental body. In 2018, Charles was recognized as a top 50 fintech influencer in Asia. His expertise in fintech and blockchain earned him widespread acclaim. In 2021, he co-authored the book Block Kong with James. And as for the subject of today's discussion, Arabian crypto, it starts off with a key premise. The United Arab Emirates has exploded onto the crypto scene. Every important player, from exchanges to DeFi founders to TradFi bankers, are setting up shop in either Dubai or Abu Dhabi. But why the UAE? How did this nation of 10 million people become the leading global hub for crypto? And is it too late to join the party for those that fancy wanting to participate in the UAE growth story? Arabian crypto delves into the UAE's regulators, founders, and executives across the spectrum of digital assets to understand what makes this nation tick and how to do business there and how to make sense of the regulatory choices available. There are indeed some exciting projects being built there. And it all begs the question, what will it mean for how the UAE fits into the global industry of blockchain-enabled commerce? Brought to you by the authors, Arabian crypto is an entree into the cutting edge of East meets West innovation and the future of money. And with that, I turn to our guests. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ajay.
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
If we go back to the forming of the show back in 2022, and I was going back and forth from here to Dubai, the fintech, the crypto scene was buzzing. Even then, people in Hong Kong and Singapore wondering what's up. You know, if we went back just a few years, the thought was it was a 2-horse race between Hong Kong and Singapore was in the slight lead. But then nothing happened in Singapore, and no one was getting approved, and everyone was on provisional. And all of a sudden, this dark horse of the UAE, particularly Dubai, just barreled forward, and everyone was wondering what happened. So explain this to me as if I was a 5-year-old. Why the UAE, and what in particular, why Dubai?
Charles, you want to start?
Yeah, I think the world of fintech and the world of crypto is evolving with our own world, essentially, and we've seen over the years a lot of political volatility, market volatility. The technology around us, should it be fintech, crypto, or AI, is growing at in exponential pace. And we've seen some of these major entrepreneurs and companies somehow, even though that was maybe not their plan, to kind of country shopping, finding places where there will be potentially a regulatory environment and business environment which would be stable, predictable, and potentially getting licenses. So we've seen indeed Asia leading the charge in the early days of the crypto industry, but with time, I think this leadership or this advance of the Asian jurisdictions was leaving some space for some contenders. So the US have been very, very late to the party, and essentially this gave space for the UAE to analyze a little bit how the beginning of crypto regulation happened in Asia, seeing what kind of potential there was for this new nation, what kind of regulation was still lacking, despite having some regulation somehow supportive of crypto. And at the same time, there was a very big migration of crypto entrepreneurs and top executives fleeing COVID restrictions, fleeing wars around the world, and finding a new place to set up their families and their business in the UAE.
Yeah, I might add on. That's a great intro. I might add that the way that the UAE has developed its technology and finance sectors is a continuum. It's not really as radical as it looks. It's just that we were surprised because we weren't paying attention. But going back to the 90s, the way they developed their tourism, their trade and logistics industries were sort of a precursor to what they do now. So basically, they've got a structure of government that is partly decentralized, but also very agile, and the top leadership can make decisions, and they look at where can they play, and they look at what are the industries that they want to be top in. And for a while, those things were like, let's build the airline and make sure that people are transiting through. Okay, let's build a good airport. Let's build a city. Let's build this and that to cater to increasing traffic, and that's that relevancy. Then it eventually wound its way through to blockchain and AI technologies as well. And so there's been a fairly consistent push from different levels of leadership, identifying that these were areas where they felt that the UAE should be not just a player, but a leader. And they've sort of been able to really realize those ambitions.
I mean, having visited I mean, I must confess, Dubai is a second home, having visited myself since April of '89. So I have seen the changes, and it was clear to me, '99, it was on a different trajectory, and it was solidified in 2003, 2004. But the sense was that really it wasn't until 03, 04 that people globally started to become aware of Dubai, until the Burj Al Arab, and they got this reputation for novelties. The biggest of this, the widest of that, the deepest of this. All of that. The tourist economy. That there was a feeling that, okay, these guys are good at some things, but there's a sense of these guys are Johnny-come-latelys. Whereas the thinking was, okay, Hong Kong, Singapore, established financial centers, stable, reliable legal systems, that would give us the edge. Because the thing about the joke in Dubai is the rules and regs can say one thing now, and 6 months later, if the sheikh changes his mind, that they could change that. I mean, and then I also want to come to the issue of the regulator, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority in Dubai. I mean, it was lauded, it was touted as being a great thing when it came along, the first such regulator of its kind in the world, catering, specifically to the virtual asset community. But there's a concern then that maybe they've catered too much to them, pandered too much to them, bent over backwards to satisfy them, because you want those funds to come to your shores, so you might be more inclined to play fast and loose with the rules. Whereas established legal systems like Hong Kong and Singapore, that things naturally take more time. That there's more of a deliberative process. Is that an impediment though then to innovation?
I'm not sure I agree with the premise. The UAE is, I mean, all places have their pros and cons. But I think the rules and regulations they've been putting in have been reasonable. Yes, there's been industry input into those, but I don't think there's anything there that's
Of course,
crazy
perceptions can be
compared to
misleading.
US.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think that overall they have so VARA is one regulatory body that was built from the ground up to be specifically about digital assets or virtual assets. But other regulators have also been innovating within their domains as financial regulators of one type or another. So I think it's actually this patchwork which is creates opportunities. Charles, you want to talk a little bit about some of what we found, talk to people about the different jurisdictions and the way things can work in the UAE?
Yeah, that's very interesting indeed. What I found is for the first time, as you may know, I used to be with the Hong Kong government as head of fintech some years ago. So I had the chance to work very closely with regulators in Hong Kong, building CBDCs with some other jurisdictions as well. And what we found very interesting is how the regulators in the UAE, specifically VARA, are built for purpose and are not kind of uh, pushed in existing regulator frame sets. So that's one thing. And what we learn also through the interviews together with Jame is I would say there is an ambition from the regulators to grow this market, which you will seldom see in any other countries. Usually you have to go and knock at the door and bend in front of the regulators to hope to get a license, and this license can be removed from you anytime. In VARA, they quickly understood that if they wanted to make space for themselves, they will need to kind of reach out and pick some of the new type of activities. Crypto options is one example with Deribit, the world leader with more than 80% market shares in crypto options, and designing for them a special framework which is very, very complicated and demanding, but designed for purpose rather than waiting and letting this business go away. But when it comes to regulators, the UAE is rich of 6 different states, right? The main states which are the most active in terms of crypto are the state of Dubai with VARA, its dedicated regulator to crypto. But another one, which is a little bit less in the news, but extremely powerful as well, is ADGM. So essentially Abu Dhabi Global Market. And that's where the regulators in crypto is part of the securities regulators and banking regulators. It's essentially a dedicated department within an existing regulator framework. And they have two different views on how to kind of grow their respective market. They're somehow in some kind of competitions, which is also interesting. But Abu Dhabi is much more looking for very established players, which already have and existing securities licenses and wants to expand into crypto. They have more this kind of approach of an elite club, offering licenses to very large hedge funds or very established crypto players. Whereas VARA will also sometimes host some very strong and powerful players globally in crypto, but also playing an innovation card, having a team which is able to monitor on-chain the activity of their regulators. So it's very interesting to see how when you build a modern set of regulations and a modern regulator, you can essentially fit with the industry and attract the industry. And I think there is clearly a global competition between countries to attract those new parts of the business. And we've seen in the US this kind of 180-degree change between an hostile industry towards crypto and after the President Trump came in, having regulators much more embracing, and the BlackRock of the world, all the banks jumping on the Genius Act and starting to issue stable coins. So these are very, very important pieces for I would say ambitions of any countries to get the right regulations and not too late. And I think the UAE has a very interesting approach and find a good balance between the different sizes of the market.
You know, these are indeed heady times. But I'd like to turn to what prompted you to write this book, especially now. What do you feel it adds to the ever-growing body of literature on crypto and fintech more broadly?
Charles began writing Block Kong some years ago, quite a few years ago now, actually, when he was at Consensus. And, so he told me what he was doing. And at the time I was running another DigFin media group. And I helped him and serialized those things on that media group. And then we turned it into a book together. And I think that was a fun project. It wasn't really that commercial in purpose. It was more like we were just there and we wanted to do something. Charles in particular really wanted to highlight what was going on in the communities that he was engaging with. And then that was more like a fun project. And then after he moved to Dubai, he gave me a call one day. I was like, I think there's something really major going on here. So Charles, what was kind of going in your head then?
Yeah, what was the genesis?
The genesis, as Jame explained, is really this book we co-edited together on Hong Kong, and seeing essentially this kind of migration and of top executive, top entrepreneurs in crypto, people leaving the US and trying to find new places, people wondering or celebrating tiny steps of their respective domestic regulators, and eventually the technology and the global market growing at very fast pace. And when I relocated to Dubai, I very quickly got my mind blown by how many of my peers were actually based in Dubai. Should they be technology leaders? Should they be bankers with real crypto ambitions, such as Nomura or Standard Chartered? And we find what was interesting is we found also a bunch of people migrating like me, coming from Hong Kong, coming from other places. So within the book about Hong Kong, Block Kong, and the book about crypto in the UAE, Arabian crypto, we find some overlap. We have for example, Henry Arslanian, which is also very active at the HKU within the fintech topics. So what was interesting is we found that that some people were following the same kind of migration. And what was important for me is to essentially document. So what we learned with Jame, publishing together this first book, Block Kong, and thinking how we could kind of iterate on the receipt for Arabian crypto. We wanted to achieve, and I think we did, essentially a business guide for crypto executive and crypto entrepreneurs, for them to be able to map the ecosystem of crypto in the UAE, understand the difference between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, understand how the regulators think and work in both jurisdictions, but also keeping the formula, which has been a winning formula in the past, interviewing and getting first-hand comments and experience from entrepreneurs like us, expanding their business of crypto in the UAE. So we hope the readers can essentially identify themselves to the journey of a compliance professional, the journey of a layer one, the journey of a CMO for a global exchange, the journey of a lawyer, growing a crypto practice in the UAE, but also having some snippets within the between chapters for the reader to understand a little bit more the history of the UAE, understanding the kind of framework the leaders of the UAE have, and how they grew and how they want to keep growing, their country over the years. So that's really trying to be some kind of business partner and having this business guide available for people curious about this part of the world, which is in many conversations. So hopefully this is going to be helpful for many.
It does come up. It does come up a lot. I'm sorry, Jamie, you were about to say.
I was going to mention that some of the people we interviewed we also talked to people who were like really, building and working on interesting projects. There's a lot of innovative stuff that's being done there. And so the book gives you just a few snapshots of the variety of things going on. And I also think it'll be interesting, not just for people directly in the crypto business, but also regulators looking to understand how the UAE has got to where it is. And anybody in traditional finance who's maybe beginning to dabble in crypto and trying to figure out how to strategize around that might give them some tips. So there's multifaceted approach to the
Jen,
world.
let's pick up on that because that's a key demographic. People in the world of TradFi. What would someone who's from the world of traditional plain vanilla banking and finance, what would they gain from this book?
Well, they're going to first of all see some of their peers like Nomura's Laser Digital, who are making Dubai their major hub outside of their home market, and maybe get a sense of why. They're going to get a sense of what it's like dealing with the regulators, because the bankers are all about, their strong suit is that they've got compliance cultures. So what is it that they can do in the UAE that maybe would be difficult to do in other markets? And I think just also to get a flavor for what's going on in the crypto space in 2025.
Fair enough. And in terms of, if you had to summarize your key conclusions and observations from your time in the UAE, what would you say they were? Your top, 4 to 6 points, your takeaways.
Charles, you want to talk about like some of the regulatory stuff?
Yes, please.
I think in terms of regulation, it's very encouraging. There is a lot of things happening. 2 things on regulation. Number one, regulations is a little bit fragmented in the UAE. So we really learn through those interviews with different crypto entrepreneurs that people have to understand what is a regulatory value proposition in Abu Dhabi, what is a regulatory value proposition in Dubai, and trying to find what fits best their business. They will have to queue. There is so many countries, so many companies after regulations over there. Word in the street are saying that there is close to 300 companies basically on the waiting list of VARA to obtain a license over there. So it's going to be quite a long process. On regulation as well, what we learn, and I believe it's 100% true, people have this image that maybe a license in the UAE is a quick thing and is not going to be too demanding. And we learn from top entrepreneurs here that actually the regulators wants to be creative in terms of licensing, but they remain extremely demanding.
Well, they've got a reputation to maintain because in the past, people were willing to play fast and loose with the rules in Dubai.
Absolutely. And I think we can probably say the same in Hong Kong back a few decades before, right? So every country grows and kind of matures.
That's right. Insider trading was at one time legal in Hong Kong before the Securities and Futures Ordinance. So yeah, your point's well taken.
The fragmentation of regulations is real. People need to kind of understand what is the value proposition of both main states such as Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I think if you're not really into strict regulations and licenses, you will probably not find what you need in the UAE. Licenses are available, but they are hard to obtain and hard to keep active. The regulators are demanding. This is not something you've seen maybe in the past, but it's definitely happening. And what is interesting, and I think a unique value proposition in the UAE so far, is regulators are very closely working with the industry. I would not be surprised that we see in the coming months decentralized finance regulations in the UAE. I learned this being a practitioner that there are some works in that direction, and that's something which will never happen over the next 2 to 3 years in Hong Kong, and let alone the US or let alone Europe as well. So we find them very close to the industry and kind of competitive and ambitious, while remaining more and more strict on the requirements. So that's probably why many entrepreneurs are attracted by the region. It's very refreshing conversations and type of regulators. So that's why it gets so much attention.
I think another lesson that kind of builds off of that is that although there are plenty of retail-facing businesses there, increasingly the story in both the major jurisdictions is about the institutional side. Abu Dhabi very explicitly, but also I think in Dubai there's a greater drive toward institutionalization and with digital assets and tokenization of real world assets, which is already happening. That's not to say there's not retail things going on. I don't want to give that impression, but I think overall, if you've got a business that is going to align with institutional flow, I think then the UAE is going to be very interested to hear your story.
One thing also we kind of discussed in the past weeks with Jame was other part of the world, such as Hong Kong, for example, somehow a little bit Singapore as well, have a very mature capital markets industry and players around them. And that's probably something lacking in the UAE. So though they have this regulation, though they have this new generation of finance practitioners, the crypto one, should they be crypto hedge funds or stablecoin issuers, the ecosystem of around the stock exchange is not available in the UAE. You have exchanges in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but they're not of the size of Hong Kong, for example, London or New York. So this will show some kind of challenges in terms of growth, and that's maybe why the local regulators and government are kind of betting on front-running new technology and embracing those new type of industry players in order maybe to catch up on the traditional finance type of business, such as the Hong Kong Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange, for example. So it's a very inspiring story, very inspiring set of entrepreneurs on the ground here next to us. But there is a few elements which keep the game open. So it's going to be very interesting in the coming years.
One thing, just again to build on what Charles said, I think another challenge for the UAE is, when because Hong Kong has this, huge capital market and long-standing, so all the actors are here, the whole ecosystem is here, the entire range of financial services and related services are here. The UAE doesn't yet have a strong venture capital market. It doesn't yet have the strong university system. It doesn't have, it's not really yet primed to be a Silicon Valley type disruptive element. Will it go that way? I don't know. Maybe they prefer to be more like a Singapore or sort of like call it a Switzerland type model. But there's possibility that it over time could develop that if they want to allow that more sort of freewheeling style. But I think some of these things will develop over time. But there are still pieces of the story that are works in progress.
Yeah, the story clearly is being told. Charles, I'd like to turn to you, given that you're based there. Do you get a sense that the other oil-rich GCC nations, I'm thinking of obviously Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, those around the UAE, those on its periphery, I don't know, perhaps even Oman, are they at all trying to copy, mimic, or to some extent Saudi perhaps, are they trying to copy the UAE's blueprint and any information on that and to what extent have they been successful or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We've heard here and there Bahrain. Bahrain has a set of licenses which seems to fit a few players. But the challenge of some of these GCC countries is that their domestic market is extremely small. The one place we are paying attention to is Saudi Arabia. It's interesting because they have a way larger domestic market, 25 million citizens, if I remember well. And they're also going through a big transformation, trying to diversify away from petrol-only type of economy. But in terms of GCC, Bahrain has probably gave away a few licenses, but nothing phenomenal. Everyone is having their eyes at Saudi, but from what we kind of reconcile from conversation, something's gonna happen over there, but it's not happening next year. It's probably gonna take like 2-3 years, and but it's gonna be probably bigger in the region because of the domestic market. But there is definitely an appetite over there from individual investors in the GCC, family offices, sovereign funds to invest in crypto. One example to illustrate that: one of the world's largest holder of Bitcoin is actually the sovereign fund from Abu Dhabi, which have been investing $400+ million at the time. It's probably close to 600 billion now in Bitcoin. They are also running Bitcoin mining farms here in the UAE, powered by nuclear energy. So I think there is also always this kind of regional competition between jurisdictions here. But definitely the UAE as kind of a way in advance against the others, and the next in the line is probably Saudi, but it's going to come a little bit later. I think the economy of Saudi has not evolved yet as much as the economy in the UAE, in terms of openness, in terms of flexibility with their cultural heritage. And that's something which helps also with the brand. Somehow, if you have a license from a country which is not kind of top of mind, it does not have the same effect on your business, and people will think twice before going into all this paperwork. But if your country brand is strong, if people feel and trust the place where the license is coming from, it is definitely helping. So UAE definitely at the top of the podium for now. Coming soon, Saudi and some other GCC countries, maybe like Bahrain, are doing a few things, but nothing of importance yet.
It is true that licensure can instill market confidence, but I'm wondering, my final question, what can Hong Kong and Singapore learn from Dubai's example? And Jame, I'd like to put that to you first, because you've been here and you've been there, and that gives you some the ability to juxtapose. But I raised that because, I mean, in my trips there since 2021, my private consulting clients, you go there, you attend events, you meet people, you gather market intelligence, you come back with a slew of business cards, and your clients, they're not interested in what can we learn from what Dubai's doing right. It's just, give me your business cards and who's willing to invest in our firm. Basically, they're more interested in how can we redirect some of that hot fintech crypto money from Dubai to the greater China region, rather than what can we learn. And I think the emphasis needs to be on the latter. What can we learn in this region? What are your thoughts?
In the arc of time over the past several years, the regulators in Hong Kong have become a lot better to work with from an industry perspective. They have been much more open. The whole government did a real 180 in 2022, pivoting towards digital assets. There's obviously a top-down agenda there. But when they came out with their various regulations, they were very restrictive and very tight. Some of the most onerous restrictions on virtual asset providers have been dealt with, but I think it's still got a sense of sort of shoehorning it into existing regulatory frameworks. And although the regulators here are much more open and willing to have a dialogue, I think the industry would probably still say that the regulations could be too tight. So if you look at the virtual asset service providers that we have, the licensed ones, they're not major global names. They're local players only. They are I think they struggle to make money. So I think there might be reasons that there might be good reasons behind the way the regulations are structured, but obviously it feels like it's been sort of designed to be very conservative, and I don't know if they need to look to the way that not just VARA, because VARA is a special case, but I think also ADGM might actually be a better model that doesn't get talked about, because when we talk to the folks at ADGM, which is an established securities regulator, it's not very old, but it's built as a securities regulator, and yet they found ways to create platforms to attract things like DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, the kind of foundations that are often at the heart of a blockchain ecosystem. So I think there's that I would look at how they've been able to fit that kind of innovative agenda into an existing traditional setup. They seem to have been able to just find a little more flexibility and willingness to work with the industry to come up with rules that are still reasonable. Overall, I think Hong Kong has actually done quite well over the past few years. They have set up. We've got ETFs into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and there's now other exchanges that are licensed here, and there's definitely things happening, and the flows are here. And I feel like the big advantage, which Charles had mentioned earlier, was just that the capital market here, the traditional capital market, is full of people who are good at this kind of thing. And so it's easy to get people to come here, and it's easy to find business opportunities. So I do think there are core strengths in Hong Kong, but I do think they can also take a page out of perhaps what the Abu Dhabi authorities have been doing, and see if they can make the regime here even more responsive.
That makes sense. A conventional securities regulator that happens to regulate crypto as well versus a crypto specific regulator. So is the war between TradFi and DeFi dead? I mean, is it meaningless to talk about the distinctions between the two? Because increasingly one gets a sense that the barriers between the two are permeable.
I think they're still quite distinct, although those barriers are becoming more translucent, perhaps. Stable coins are going to be perhaps a change factor, that holds both a lot of excitement and also a lot of risk. But I would note that on October 10th, about 2 weeks ago, there was a huge meltdown in the crypto markets, primarily on the Binance exchange. $19 billion was wiped out. There were issues around problems with oracles, with market makers, with automatic deleveraging protocols. And so for people caught up in that, it was pretty bad. But I don't think anything happened in traditional finance. I don't think any single stock exchange cared. I don't think the bond markets even noticed. So I think we're still at a point where things can go awfully wrong in crypto, and it doesn't yet affect, let's call it, the real world, or the traditional world of financial markets. Whether stablecoins are going to change that, as stablecoins go from being a crypto capital market tool to becoming a globally relevant form of payment facilitation and perhaps other uses. That, I think, is something that everybody has to pay attention to.
Charles?
What I see on my side is, depending of which part of the world you will see TradFi and crypto being either starting to overlap and absorbing each other's, and some other part of the world they remain on their lane. The US has been really impressive in a matter of a few months. BlackRock launched these crypto ETFs, which are probably the most successful ETF launch in BlackRock history. We see all the banks in the US adopting a stablecoin and going all in for multiple reasons. One reason is essentially to become a systematic buyer of the government bonds from the American government. But that's for another conversation. In other part of the world, sometimes you feel, and probably in Hong Kong that's the case, yes, we need to do crypto. We show to our leadership, we tick the box. Yes, we have licenses, but maybe the KPI is to say, okay, we need to have a license available, and we need to have like 2 or 3 licenses. What I feel in the UAE is the KPI from the leadership towards the regulators is to say you need to issue licenses, and I want to see business growth. I want to see people being employed. I want to see AUM competing at global level with some other part of the world. So we have the same in Europe, where government issue licenses, but eventually their licensee gets so much restrictions around this license that they're not in the game anymore, really. So it feels like, yes, this competition between regulations is happening in a different pace, different in different part of the world, and some places the lanes are still very well defined between crypto and TradFi. And some other part of the world, the overlap is and the absorption from TradFi of DeFi or vice versa is definitely happening. I think what we will see coming very quickly, probably in the US first and Asia, not necessarily Hong Kong, but other part of Asia, and the Middle East, is the fintech side of things becoming some kind of front end for crypto and stablecoin. And we will see kind of a fintech in the front and crypto at the back. And the reason this kind of adds on to fintech and banking in general will happen very quickly, it's the very fast growth of stable coins, which are competing big time with the CBDCs, but they are offering really this new generation of money, and the integration of the stable coin within the TradFi banking system and within the fintech system is really this moment. Probably the crypto industry was waiting for a long time.
I guess we'll have to leave it there. Any as for closing remarks, any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
The book is available in print and ebook versions on Amazon.
Very good. Charles?
Yes, absolutely. And please follow Jame, follow myself as well on social media. We're going to keep investigating this part of the world, understanding how the crypto industry is evolving in the UAE. So make sure you get some updates and new bits of news from crypto in the UAE, following Jame and I on socials.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ajay.
Thanks, Ajay.
And to our listeners, thank you. Until next time.